How well you loved me then. You could not bear to ask for one more kiss. You seem so different now. Your manner pleasantly blasé. My broken heart refuses to believe we've come to this.
Happy as can be, you know she says so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. Baby says she's mine, you know she tells me all the time, you know she says so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. I'm so glad she's my little girl. She's so glad she's telling all the world that her baby buys her things, you know. He buys her diamond rings, you know. She says so. She's in love with me and I feel fine. she's telling all the world that her baby buys her things, you know. He buys her diamond rings, you know. She says so. She's in love with me, and I feel fine. I feel fine. I feel fine. Yeah.
Monday, August 8th, Single Family Design Board. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board on any item not on today's agenda? Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for approval of minutes of the Single Family Design Board meeting of July 25th, 2016. Before we do that, we probably should do a roll call. Kathleen, can we have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Sweeney.
Here.
Vice Chair Miller.
Here.
Lisa James. Denise Willery. Here. We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. I apologize to everyone in the audience. It's one of those circumstances. We have 6 board members. We're supposed to have 7, and we're still looking for our 7th member. But unfortunately, during the summer, sometimes we get hung up. So we've had a couple of board members were not able to attend, and we had a couple that were a little late getting here. So we'll try to make up for lost time as quickly as we can. So let's go to the agenda of the 25th, which I thought I had in front of me. So let's review those one at a time. So item number 1 was 210 Miggs Road. Lot number 2. Does anyone have any? Well, first of all, let me get a motion for approval.
I make that motion.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, so 210 Miggs Road. Any comments, changes? Item number 2, 210 Miggs Road, Lot 3.
I don't have a copy of the minutes.
Okay. Item number 3, 120 Mesa Lane.
Okay.
Number 4, 626 Alston Road.
Fred, I need to stop you for a second.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't have a set of the
Sure.
agenda.
Let me get you one, right? Here's the agenda.
Thank you.
You need that or you need the minutes?
For July 20,
Here's July 25th.
that's the one I don't have. Thank you.
There you go. Okay. 626 Alston Road.
Yeah, I do too.
11 Via Alicia. And number 6, 2225 Mount Calvary Road. Item number 7, 1303 Farillo Road. I want to bring to your attention, you may have a copy of some marked draft edits. There was some questions by the applicant to the draft that went out. So I reviewed that with Kathleen this afternoon. And if you'll go to that last page where there's changes in blue, on item number 9 of the motion, the applicant wanted to make sure that we indicated that the fences, columns, and gates that were constructed westerly of the column at the south end or east end of the entry drive could remain in place. On item number 13 of the motion, we're just again clarifying where the fence and gate must be removed. It's approximately 10 feet from the southerly pilaster, and that it goes down to the historic altar railing, and that it needs to be 42 inches high. And then I suggested that we also, because this is a recommendation to Public Works, that we put in parentheses and or as required by Public Works, because I'm not sure. The building code says 42 inches if it's 36 inches or more higher, but Public Works may have a different criteria. And then the applicant wanted to make sure that we weren't referring to the little set of steps. They're not historic, or at least not designated yet as historic. And just to clarify, it was at the east end. So those were...
Mr. Chair, may I comment?
Yes.
I didn't get to see these changes.
Okay.
So I'd recommend for number 9, then
yes.
the set of saying the board allows, again, since it's not subject to your final approval, that the board state it accepts the gates as constructed or something similar.
The board
recommends that it.
recommends. Maybe the word recommends.
The same thing for item number 9. Instead of shall be,
Okay.
recommends that the reconstruction be at the 42-inch height minimum.
Okay.
I think that's what the Public Works Department wants to hear, your recommendation.
Right, because it's headed by that, the in bold at the top.
Right.
You're probably correct. Okay. Okay, with those changes, is that acceptable? Anyone have questions, comments? If not, then we do have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
Mr. Chair, one
Yes.
last thing. Again.
Yes.
For the item on Via Alicia, the action is 4-0. I think there's 2 opposed, so there should be, is it 4-2? We're all 6 here for that
Hold on a
item?
minute. Let me go back.
For the vote on page 6, bottom of page 6. Maybe Ms. Gu knows that the vote should not be 4-0.
Yes, it should be, 4-2.
4-2?
Because it says Sweeney and Bernstein opposed.
Okay,
So that's a correction.
thank you.
Okay. Any other changes, questions, comments? Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Let's go to consent calendar for Monday, August 1st. Mr. Lamone.
Yes, on that day, we had item A, 3435 Marina Drive, that received, or that actually was continued to today's agenda. That's on for your first item today. Item B was 2141 Ridge Lane, and that was continued 1 week to consent due to the applicant's absence. And item C, 2446 Garden Street, was final design and final approval for the project. Those items were reviewed.
Do we have D&E?
Were there D&E? Oh, okay. Item D, 2510 Calle Galicia, project design approval and final approval with MPO findings. Item E, 825 Alameda Padre Serra, action may be taken, continued indefinitely to full board. So that was also, I take that back.
That was-
I did want to report on that.
Yes.
That was a situation where there was a cable railing proposed, and the consent reviewers were having a difficult time accepting it without doing a site visit and having more justification made by the architect. So the architect did not want to have to wait 2 weeks, so I asked the chair to go out and look at it and see if they could come up with a solution, and he did, in fact, review that and referred it back to staff. However, you may still be seeing this project because we since have discovered that they need some zoning modifications. So you may have to
So
see
under
this.
that scenario, they would be coming back to us anyway for comments because of the zoning
Most likely, right.
modification. Okay. All right.
And so those items were reviewed by Brian Miller and Lisa James.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second for? Do I have any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to this morning, Monday, August 8th, consent calendar. Mr. Lamone.
Okay. Item A, 2118 Mount Calvary Road, review at final, approved as submitted. 2141 Ridge Lane, that was item B, which was received project design and final approval with the NPO findings. Item C, 243 Salida del Sol, received project design approval with the NPO findings and was continued indefinitely to consent review with comments. Item D, 1033 North Ontario Road, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. And all these items were reviewed by Brian Miller and Lisa James.
Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? First and second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to announcements. Mr. Lamone.
As you're aware, we have 2 board members that will not be present today, Ms. Bernstein and Mr. Mokisha.
Okay, thank you. And no subcommittee reports that I know of, so let's then go directly to item number 1, 3435 Marina Drive. The applicant come forward, please. This is for review after final. Is requested for the removal of a living room fireplace chimney, addition of exterior fireplace, window location changes and additions, alternate trellis detail, an addition of an elevator, revised master floor plan, and new skylights. Welcome, if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Paul Zink. I'm the architect for this project. Can we have this? There's some photographs that were sent, and then also 11 by 17 with highlighted marks.
Do you have Mr. Miller actually?
Well, I was looking at this.
Final review?
Final approval.
It's already been final and it's under construction.
I understand that. What was our...
Final approval as submitted. Action carried by Miller, seconded by Woolery, and motion carried. Motisha abstained.
And the date of that action was?
I'm a little confused.
A long time ago.
It should be 50 pages.
March 9th, 2015.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you could share with us what you're intending to change.
If you don't mind, I'll go through the 11 by 17s because they have the marks highlighted in yellow, and then in larger scale in case you want to read. This is the area. The project has been sold to a new person. The person who purchased the house, we're making some changes to customize it for their desires. This is the site plan. The changes, we're changing the trellis at the front, we're adding some skylights, we're adding a fireplace to the back of the building, and we removed a chimney. This is the site plan showing the roof plan. We met with the neighbors, we discussed them, we did a mock-up out of plywood, and we actually took photographs. This lower area shows the plywood mock-up of the fireplace chimney that's going to be in this deck area. Let me see what this other photo is. Just another side area showing the area in the front where the trellis is going to be changed, modified. And here's another one from the front drive area showing where the garage is going to be located. The changes. Moving through. We deleted one of the windows on the lower level. It was underneath the stair landing configuration. I can show you an elevation, but that's one of the windows we removed. This is the configuration change for the trellis. The trellis before was a little bit smaller, was off-center. This wall, there's no change to the wall except for adding one gate at this location. Here is the fireplace. It is a wood-burning fireplace on the lower level, and on the upper level, it is a ventless fireplace. So on the upper level, all there's going to be is a flue in the back and then this ventless fireplace. On the upper floor, we changed, because we added this elevator, we changed the interior floor plan. The new owner would like to have a window lined up here in relationship to this area. The window is 18 inches right above the shelf in the master closet. I'll show you an elevation. We moved this window from this area over to here. We changed this window ever so slightly in the shower, and we made this window, we dropped this window, made it slightly larger, and we changed that window in that end. This is the roof plan once again with the changes that occur in elevation. This is the front elevation showing the change of the trellis at the garage. This is the change that happened for the window. Before we had an arched window. Now this window and the window on the side are completely identical in height. I can show you. This is the fireplace that we deleted. These, I told you we made that master shower window slightly different. Here's the chimney. On this end, this is where we added a window. And then this bottom mass increases in width because we had the lower fireplace and then the upper fireplace, and there's one flue and it has a copper cap on the top. This is identical design-wise, just modified the size and the change. No change to the height, just the configuration. More changes here with the chimney, the master shower window, and this fireplace arrangement. More sections going through the different elements. And then the revised window schedule, we actually increased the window area by 26 square feet. So that is the presentation, and that is all the items that are covered.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Does the board have questions?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
I just want to feel more comfortable looking at the changes on the elevations on a larger scale.
Mm-hmm. There also was a letter that was submitted by the adjacent neighbor saying that they reviewed the plans and the changes and they found them to be acceptable. In relationship to
I'm
their.
not sure we have that letter.
It's in the file. I turned it in when I was at consent. Plus, it was emailed to the.
Well, but we haven't seen it, so I guess that was my question.
Okay.
So the elevator was accomplished with inside the existing envelope.
Correct.
Okay, no questions, comments?
I have no comments. I see no major effect of size, bulk, and scale or exterior changes that are too great, so I can support the project.
Same here.
Well, Mr. Lamone, looking for the letter. I just have one, I do have one question on this fireplace. You're saying the bottom is a wood fireplace?
The bottom is a wood-burning fireplace.
So how does that fit?
It vents right through here.
So you're 2 feet and 10 feet and all that big monkey business
Yep.
with the code?
Yep.
Okay, so smoke will come out of this thing?
Yes. The goal was to keep this in a low profile. I have it at 5 feet.
That's a good question.
I have it at. The smoke is 13 feet from this element, which is for the damper element, and then here, this is the 10 foot and 2 feet that you were referring to.
So has that been run by the building department at this point? Or
No, it hasn't.
still waiting to? So if that needs to get higher,
Yeah.
If it gets, hopefully, it's not more than 6 inches or so.
okay?
Here's the letter read.
And we do have one letter. Let's see.
From John and Sandy.
Actually, there's a couple others here.
Oh, good.
Changes.
I didn't know about the other ones.
All right, let me.
Make sure the date is 2016 before we read them.
Okay, there's one that's August 2014.
Old one.
This is something about the second design, but it's not. There's no date. And here's one, review after final. This is Schofield and Kaseshian.
Correct?
Okay. Property, I mean, let's go over the proposed changes. Okay, so they're on
They're the ones closest. They're on the east of the property.
so they're here?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, the chair will call for a motion. This is for review after final.
I'll make that motion. I move to give the
Yes, go ahead.
project final approval with the following findings: consisting in appearance is appropriate with the style of the neighborhood, compatibility is appropriate with the site of the neighborhood, quality of architecture and materials are also natural, appropriate for the consistency of the architecture.
And so just to clarify, this is approval of the requested changes after final.
Yes,
Correct.
this is approval of requested changes after final. Correct.
Do I have a second to that motion? Okay. Mr. Lamone, does this have a 10-day appeal period?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any further discussion to the motion? Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. This will have a 10-day appeal period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy that day.
Okay, let's go to item number 2, 210 La Vista Grande.
I'll do it.
Okay. Mr. Lamone, this, my recollection is that this project was here before us before. Is that correct? Is that the minute you have?
Yes, it was.
Okay, all right. I'll have you do that in a minute. If you could
Yes.
introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, John Beecham, architect for the owner, Kane David Rossi.
Okay.
Lane Goodkind, landscape architect.
Okay, welcome. If you can read what we commented on our last review.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Number 1, the board appreciates the applicant's efforts in working with the neighbors. Number 2, provide cross-sections from various points of view, or various viewpoints. Number 3, the style of architecture is compatible with the neighborhood. Number 4, provide a roof color and details of the fascia. Number 5, study softening the look of the house with landscaping and utilizing an appropriate color scheme. Number 6, reduce the lighthouse effect to the north of the project along La Vista Grande. Number 7, study lowering the finished floor at the highest level of house to 14.5 feet. Number 8, provide a preliminary landscape plan showing existing and proposed planning. Number 9, study the rear deck off the master bedroom to follow the 15-foot distance guideline. Action taken by Pierce, seconded by Woolery. The action was carried unanimously. I opposed.
Thank you. So there was one of the opposition. Okay. If you could share with us how you address those comments, please.
Yes. So first I'd like to just discuss I think one source of some confusion maybe is the single-family design board description doesn't reflect our current set of changes. We've reduced the area of the project and pulled things back. This is in relationship to working with the neighbors and reducing area, but it brought our FAR down from 86 to 77. I mean, so we've reduced the scale of
this FAR is now 77?
Correct, 77.
Can you state the reduction in size of the house? What is the size of the house now proposed? It said 3,300. It said 3,300 proposed.
Proposed.
What are you at now?
What are you at?
So our total, well, with garage, we're at 3,000.
3,656.
656.
So we added 3806.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and that's dropped it to 77% FAR?
Correct.
All right.
So I just feel like that might be some of the source of confusion with some in the background. So I'd like to show, this is the existing house here. And just want to reiterate a few points. This is a garage, existing garage, body of the house, is currently over the 10-foot setback at this corner of the garage. So we're having to, because of the grades, we're having to shift this body of the house over. But we've been able to keep that still less than our overall area there. But what I'd like to just show, if you need to see the context photos again, you can look at that. But here is our, flip that over. Here's our site plan. We have, again, the grade of La Vista Grande is much higher than the house itself. So you can see from these photos. So the house sits, below the road, as you can see from here. These are views taken from across the street at La Vista Grande. So it requires us to drive down in that garage. The garage had to shift to get out of that setback. And in working with the neighbors, predominantly the uphill neighbor, who would have been impacted the most, we have reduced our area here and reduced heights. Now, the board didn't ask for this, but this was just in further efforts to try to work with the neighbor. And I'd just like to show quickly, just visually, how that works. The red is the areas we've reduced and pulled in. Our overall net from outside edge of deck structure, we've pulled in 16 feet. We've reduced that deck that was in that, the request of the guideline of the 15 feet. We pulled that back an additional 7'2". But basically, I just want you to see, we've reduced the area here, and that's where we kind of got that reduction in FAR. But these were all in efforts working with the uphill neighbor. So the green are our differences in number. So our scale structure was 9 feet, overall was 16. And then we also it was a minor comment in the board, but we have reduced our deck areas. We've pulled each one back in an additional 9 feet. And then these bodies of the house that are at 11 feet. So part of those compromises, pulling it in, just quickly where it related to in the floor plan, just real quickly, were in this master suite area. We did have additional bedroom here and stair as back of this body of the house. We've removed those and put the bedroom on the front of the house, reconfigured stairs. So we've reduced, part of those compromises. We've pulled in the living room area, we've pulled in the master bedroom area, and that's what you reflected in that overlay drawing. So the other, so I'd just like to point out, we have kind of basically a walkout basement, so that part is consistent, but we have reduced the area a bit. Our roof plan, so what we have is a stainless steel metal roof over the body of the house. We have a ballasted roof across the rest. I have those materials to show. One thing that the change in the roof, again, except for pulling things down, this is our higher roof. This roof height, we originally had this overall roof height at 15'6". We've been able, because of the pitch, we've been able to reduce it down to 15'3". Puts our lower edge of fascia at 14'4". Prior, we had it as a flat roof at 15'6". This body of the house came down from 14 feet to 12 feet, and this is La Vista Grande, so this is the part facing the street. We've reduced the height of this body of the house from 13 feet to 11 feet, and then this back edge that was up against the neighbor, again, was further out. We've pulled things in. We had it at 12 feet, and so now we're down at 10'10". We've reduced the overall heights. And again, it's pulled in to help with the view part of that. This roof was 15'6" out further, the additional 9 feet, and that's where we've pulled everything in. So the front elevation, and I'm sorry, I would like to make one other point. Prior, we had this canopy. This canopy is at 11'4". This is on the back side of the house, so it's not in view of La Vista Grande, but we did have it turn into and form the entry cover of the house. And that edge would have been visible from La Vista Grande. That was on the previous set that you saw. We've pulled that canopy out and extended out our roof, our main body roof. So our canopy was at 12 feet, and now we're at 14'4" and 15'3". So that's the difference from, as far as the roof goes, from what you saw before. But our delta number, we can show on the floor plan better, but we're in this area where the canopy came up past that house, past the corner edge of the house. Our elevations show that roof area. So here's our view from La Vista Grande. This dark line is our line of the street. So as you can kind of see how the house is nestled into the site. Here's our allowed 30-foot height limit. And just to recap our conversation from before, it's been a while. We were looking at a 2-story house, and that's what was preferred. But in respect of our eastern neighbors, we had decided that it was better to keep this as a single-story house and extend it down along the site, as opposed to trying to take it all in the body of the front street elevation. So here's that extended roof I just mentioned. So it keeps this open. Architecturally, I'm doing this because it frames a view out towards the mesa and the edge of the harbor as guests would kind of enter the house. Again, we had that before, but it came out to about here, and it was a canopy roof. We're going to take the body of the roof over. So it's an architectural element for framing these views. Again, the garage is pulled in. This is our view on this, east, so our west side. This is that open entry area from the opposite of this. Then we have, this is our canopy roof, sliding glass doors. Here's our master suite and our basement office area below. So on our, our north elevation, this was where we worked with a neighbor quite a bit. We did our own story poles. with this neighbor in an effort to continue working with the neighbors and try to work things together as a compromise. So as our compromise, we've pulled this body of the house in, and this edge. This is that master suite behind. But I'd like to show you, you had asked about the sections to see how that related. One of the requests was the lantern effect. This is the Vista Grande on this side. This is our bedroom. This is our clerestory window on this side. We're not looking to uplight anything out of the body of the house, but we respect the request that the board made about that, and I agree. But because this is the kitchen area is inside the body of the house, we'd like to have that eastern morning daylight enter in that part of the house. So I'd like to get that daylight in, but I have dropped in a soffit within the interior of the house to help deflect any ambient light that could kind of make its way back out in the evening time, if you will. So we've tried to make that that distinction. And this is a kind of an enlarged detail if you needed to see how that works. So our window area, we're about 1'8" to frame, framed rough opening, and then on these edges we're using an integral gutter roof, so it won't have a gutter on the La Vista Grande side. And so we have these details if you need to see more of those. Right. So what it starts to begin to look like, or exactly what it looks like, this is the home. And as mentioned, to continue working with neighbors, we have brought out, we did story poles with the neighbor to the north. He was a part of that process. We allowed him to pick the contractor, and we set these poles so that everyone can kind of start to see. So here's our existing home. This is the two poles. These are our poles at 16 feet. These are our poles at the back at the heights that I mentioned to you. From that point, we reduced the house, the high point of the roof, down to 15.3. So it allows you to really start to see those are these 2 points. And you'll see a little extension on there. That's just the tape sticking up. Again, the garage had to pull in from where you see here. But because it's, lower than the grade of the street, this is how it starts to nestle into that site. Lane will speak to the landscaping, but we request to kind of soften this front facade further, and so we were able to model the trees and bring those in that are on our plan in some of our front landscaping. But I would like to reference this part for you. So here's general renderings around the rest of the site. Again, here's that front view. This is that open entry that we're doing. I mean, we could fill that body of the house out to that setback line, but we made the choice to kind of treat the foyer of the house as an exterior space as opposed to an interior space. It allowed us to further reduce that footprint on the La Vista Grande side. We've been, all of our structural elements are outside of that setback. Then this is our northern view where we've pulled things back. Now there's a canopy that's, maybe this helps explain it, that's on the south side of that to protect from the sun, because this is up on a pretty exposed area of the site. So I have brought in an element to ground this end of the house and support that canopy so that the canopy could become thinner and not become a large, bulky item. And I'd like to just show you what we did with those neighbor studies. I have to give the owners credit again for allowing us to go to these efforts to try to work with the neighbors. It's a very nice neighborhood. You'll hear a lot of comments. People who have a lot of passion for this area. And so we had taken a lot of steps to study it. And so we knew where we were when we were going into this. So the owners let me commission to have an overall, we had our topo plan. We did this, a full topo over the entire area, for the immediate neighbors, as you can see. So we did site section studies through this area. Sorry, I'm covering over your part here. here's an aerial view of this. This is our site. This is a neighbor to the immediate north. This neighbor has views, and we wanted to study how it could potentially impact him. And this is our neighbors at 1510 Knoll. So what you're seeing here is, I just want to bring these points up. For the neighbor to the north, this is a carport that's accessed off of Vista Grande. This is their home. This is their outside patio right here. This home has a master bathroom deck, so it's off the bathroom at this corner, and a living area in this part of the house. So I'm just bringing that up so it'll make sense with the photos. So that immediate neighbor to the north, we were able to do sections through the entire site and really start to study their building pad elevation versus ours, our roof heights. This represents our reductions from when we were here before. So these are the heights we've pulled down in our compromising. So what we did was we did a story pole plan with him to understand where we're going. That's just what you saw in that photo. So again, this was, he's here on the north side of the site. So we outlined all these points are so much lower than here. So we did the profile that would affect our neighbors at 1510, our neighbors at just to the north. So we outlined these points. Those are our 16-foot that you saw on that photo. These were at 13, and we were at our 11.6. We reduced those from 11.6 to 10.10. Went from 13 to 12.10. These are the numbers in blue are the points you see on that photo. So what that looks like from his vantage point. So this, I'm sorry, I'll start here. So this is my standing view from outside their dining room. So here are our story poles. Here's our high point across there. This view is taken just outside of his living room. So again, our high point here, and then the edge. This is the same view sitting. I'm sorry, standing. This was sitting. This was standing. So, prior we were out up to 16 feet further out, 9 feet for the structure out here. So this is where we were making the compromises to pull in, and our story poles are showing that. Our highest neighbor, we could. This is up and across the Vista Grande. We did those studies prior, and here's that palm tree, and you can see, there's our house. We're so far under that, we didn't affect his. We were lower than where we were with that original photo. So here's our neighbors at 1510 Knoll Circle. This is their home. This is the existing hedge that you see in the photos, and it shows on the context photos that we have. Here's our project, and again, our reductions from where we were. Now, again, the board didn't ask for those reductions, but we've made those in the effort of compromise with the neighbors. So this is from the patio area of the neighbor, and they were gracious enough to work with us on this and let us study it from their house. This is the edge of that south story pole. So this is our highest point, and the rest of the house is back. There's that palm tree for reference. From a sitting view from the dining room area, and here's the living room, no poles are in view. I couldn't identify any through here. Standing view from that point, this is that high point of the south story pole. Here are our west story poles. So we feel that our efforts have helped, provided a project for the neighborhood, and we didn't go 2 stories. That was where we would have liked to gone because the views are so nice. But we understand that, and the sensitivity here. So we're keeping that as a single story, and that's what these reflect. And just want to review a few other items real quick. That we did look at lowering the overall
You need to be
grade.
speaking into the microphone,
I'm sorry.
please.
We did to try and look at every option we can. We did study lowering the grade. When we started working out how because again the house is lower than the street elevation as you come down. It put us, if we lowered it 1 foot, it put the driveway, above our kind of recommended 10%. We were almost 12% grade to make that 1 foot change. Well, it's already tight enough for a car to bottom out. We have to be careful the car doesn't bottom out as it comes up the driveway and out of Vista Grande. And we can't raise the grade because we're working efforts to lower it. So I just wanted to let you know that we did study that as an option as well. And the question was about colors. Since the house, what we're looking to do is have a standing seam metal roof. It has to be mechanically seamed because of such a low pitch. But we're looking at a sample like this one. I'm sorry. And then the ballasted part of the roof would be our Santa Barbara Gold. So it'd be like the crushed rock on top so that we don't have the membrane shown. With that, I'd like to let Lane comment on the landscaping portion.
So we had the opportunity on a project like this because of the grade change to do a lot of the things we want to do aesthetically for screening from all property lines. Because we have that fall height, we don't need a lot of height in our material to do what we need to do. Because the house is lower, these trees can be purchased and installed immediately so that the house essentially disappears. Because we only have to screen 10 to 12 feet. These are small trees, and they're intended to stay small and not get up to ever become a different issue in of themselves. So looking at the section, you can see that that's true. We only need a few feet at the street side, and down here, our goal on the downhill side is to just control views a little bit to some of the houses down below, yet allow everyone else's view to just go over the top of them. And that's similar to what we're trying to do with the house. We're trying to do the same thing with the landscape. And as far as the side properties go, there's an existing hedge here, and there's some existing plant material here. The goal is to maintain all of that. But with more some plant material right now, it's pretty, how should I say, vigorous. There's some Cape honeysuckle there that needs a lot of pruning, the very aggressive root system, and there's some walls that are in poor shape that the concern is that once construction goes on here, they'll get damaged. So the owner's goal would be to remove those hedges and replace with the same size material, but just a different species. So that we maintain all the hedges for screening purposes where they need to be maintained. And the rest is meant to be really simple drought-tolerant stuff. The hillside is meant to be left fairly natural. The palette there would be some perennial grasses, some fruit trees. The owner wants to grow a couple rows of table grapes.
Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. Before we go to public speakers, Mr. Lona, does staff have any comments we need to hear about?
No, we do not.
Okay. I do have one question from staff. Ordinarily, if this were a single-story house anywhere else in the city, under our current zoning rules, my understanding is single-story houses don't have to be reviewed by this board if they're under 17 feet 6 inches to the top of the ridge of the house, correct?
That's correct.
However, this project, because it's in the Hillside Design District, irregardless, needs to be reviewed by the board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go. We have some public speakers, so I'm going to ask you to come forward, please. First speaker is James
Might want to
Scarfide, and we're going to have sit in this, use that microphone right there.
Sorry.
Brian, can you reach and turn
Yeah.
that one on? Thank you.
Oh.
He's got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Scafidi. I was asked to attend this meeting by the neighbors who submitted a petition to you. I guess I would just like some clarification. I think it would serve you to have clarification. The architect has indicated that the architect and the neighbors worked together to put up some story poles. First of all, I think it's, as I understand it from Mr. Wild, who was the neighbor on the north, the story poles were not a complete set of story poles. And secondly, I think they were up for a very short period of time. Did not allow everyone, at least the neighbors that I spoke to, the opportunity to really get a sense of the project. There have been significant changes to the project as identified by the architect. I think it would merit reinstalling story poles and let the neighbors get an idea of what's going on. And you'll see that I didn't check that I'm opposed or in favor of the project. I actually checked them both. I'm just trying to get more information on behalf of the clients so we can figure out what's going on with this project. That's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll respond shortly to the story pole issue. The
Thank
next speaker is Peggy White.
Hi.
Hi.
I am here in regards to the story poles specifically. As a layman and a spatially challenged one at that, these kinds of, especially the diagrams, don't mean a lot to me. It could be lovely, and a lot of it does look really nice, but when I look at the diagrams, it looks, the scope of the project looks pretty large for our neighborhood. Might not be that way, but the story poles that were up before were, again, up, I think, for a very short period, and a number of the neighbors didn't even know that they were there. That's basically all I'm asking, is that a full set of story poles be constructed so that, you know, we in the neighborhood can see, and hopefully this isn't way overscale. My untrained eye, it looks overscale for our neighborhood, and I think about precedent setting as well as homes turn over as they seem to be in our neighborhood, and it just going on. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I have a
you.
question for the architect. The story poles reflected the old design, right? Not the what you did.
No, they're the new design.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Kevin White, the next speaker, please. You had that other set of drawings you had. Section, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kevin White, and I live at 1510 Knoll Circle, and I'm not for or against this project. I think that you've really done a lot to try to work with the neighbors. However, I also feel that that there may still be some things that could do to lower the profile a little bit. We've talked about the story poles, and you read I have a letter that I've addressed to you, which addresses all of that, so I won't go into that. But one thing that you just brought up as far as lower the elevation, you were speaking of the driveway and the pitch that could go down, that you're concerned that it would get too much of a pitch going down the hill. And I've been looking at going up and down La Vista Grande, and a lot of the driveways start at the south, at the lowest point, and then go in. Your driveway at that project is up quite a bit from the lowest point. And I would hope that you would consider maybe bringing the driveway in from a little bit lower place. And I think that you could not have too steep of a driveway and yet still lower the overall pad by maybe even as much as 2 feet.
Excuse me, Chair, may I address that? We did do
No, make some notes. I'm going to allow you to address it after we finish public comment.
So, and also the existing driveway, if you look at a lot of the driveways on the street, they immediately start from the street with their drop. And this particular one actually goes up a little bit before it goes down. It's very level. In fact, it actually goes up slightly before it drops down. So I would like the board to consider, and the architect, to whether or not it be possible to lower the pad. I think it would. My concerns would really totally go away if this project were down a couple of feet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Janet Mitchell.
Well, I've lived in this neighborhood for 39 years. I've watched a lot of projects come and go. I'm opposed to it. This is a massive project for our neighborhood. And the ceiling heights make it even more massive. I would like to see the story poles. I had a chance, the owner to the north invited me to look at the original story poles, and I was pretty surprised at how big the project was. And the lowered project is only a few inches lower as far as listening to the presentation here today. I don't think that this project is in keeping with the neighborhood. So I would also like to see new story poles that reflect the actual present plan so that we can see what it looks like, see the bulk of it. I think it would be very revealing. So, thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker is Richard Mitchell.
I'm Richard Mitchell. I live at 65 La Vista Grande, and I've lived there for about 30 years. I am very concerned with the scale of the project itself. It appears to be a massive structure, much larger than anything else in the neighborhood, and I believe something like twice the size of the house that's there now. Now, what concerns me about that is that it may interfere with both privacy and light of the people who live to either side of it, and it will, in fact, I think, affect the skyline of those who live above it. I just think it is not like any other house in the area. I don't know. You probably don't agree, but I don't think that it is. Given the fact that there have been some major changes proposed, and we can't really evaluate those very easily. I mean, we can look. One of the previous speakers said it was difficult to actually look at a drawing and determine how it was going to look when it was finished, and that you hear that all the time, but it's true. And I too would like to request that either a story pole or some form of mock-up be used to show us what this thing's going to look like, because it's big, and I think once it's built, it's too late, and I think it would be beneficial if we could get an idea of what it really looks like on the site. And I would second Kevin White's appeal to have the driveway looked at. If that's a viable way to bring the level down, that would be quite helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public speakers? Not, the chair is going to close public comment. And before we bring back the board, Mr. Lone, did we get any other written material other than the speakers? So we had a support letter from Melissa Cousteau, a support letter from Janet and Bob Cates. We had a support letter from Patricia and Gerald Hampton. We had a letter from the Mitchells, who just spoke. We had a support email from a Virginia Ketzel.
I didn't see it.
And then we had a letter on behalf of the Whites sent in by Wild and Creighton. And we had a request for story poles signed by several adjacent neighbors.
Chair, I'm sorry. There was a letter from the owner that was submitted.
And there was a letter from the owner, yes.
That they're not able to be here. They're
Yes.
out of the country. They
Understand
really
that.
wanted to address the neighbors.
Okay. So we have those, and I think those were all sent to us earlier today via email. Okay. With that, the chair is going to then close the public comment and come back to the board for questions.
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like
Yes.
to hear the architect comment regarding the
Okay.
driveway.
Yes.
Yes, so if we did shift the numbers I was explaining to you about the percentage of slope on the driveway represents us moving the curb cut about 5 feet towards the south.
So
we're already making that change.
Where is the driveway curb cut today?
May I go to the
That on
the
this drawing?
existing site plan? Is here. So here's our curb cut now.
So the curb cut is here.
That's right. So, our slope is extremely great now.
Okay.
We're shifting that curb cut down as far as
So
slope
it
as we
moves
can.
to the south,
Right.
you said 5 feet?
That's right.
So
And
it's not, it's about 5 feet difference from where it is today.
the proposed
Yes.
curb cut, correct.
Okay.
No, we're already trying to do everything we can to lower that and flush it. If I may, there already are, there was a lot of references to massive to the project.
Okay, we're going to get into all of that.
I'm
We're
sorry.
going to let the board
Okay, we
have
have the
questions
numbers.
now. But just to clarify, on the driveway. So you've moved the curb cut opening down. That allowed you to get this lower because it's going downhill, correct? And your grading effort is to get this point as low as you can in terms of getting this to be 10% or less from here to there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you move that curb cut anywhere else, if you moved it further up, then the slope drops dramatically and you have a bigger challenge to get 10% to get this lower, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you move it anywhere further this way, you have an additional, what's the scale on this thing, 1/8 of an inch? You had the possibility to possibly move it, let's see, you have a 10-foot setback, as I understand it. So you could have moved it another 6 feet to the south, but based on my looking at your numbers here, that isn't going to be able to get this to drop in much further, maybe another 6 inches.
That's correct.
At
And
most.
then our walkway becomes the driveway, which we try to.
Okay, so you've kind of moved it as far as you can to get the slope to work. If you had your garage over here, it wouldn't work because you'd have to be higher. Correct? Okay. All right, let's go to other questions.
I don't have any questions, Mr.
Other
Chair.
questions? Okay, I'm going to, I do have some questions. Let's see, I want to go to that photograph. Here it is. And you had actually a bigger photograph.
Oh, here, look at these
I
students.
think it's on a bigger photograph of that. That's right, okay. So the ridge height currently for this existing roof, you know what that is? That point right there?
Yes, sir. We had it measured 508.92. Should have brought a calculator to quickly.
508.92. What is your finished floor existing?
497.5.
497.95.
I'm sorry, 0.5. 497.5.
05.
Okay.
0.5.
So,
I'm sorry, 0.5, not 05.
497 finished floor now. The top of that ridge is 508. So who has a calculator real quick? Brian, you got one there?
Yeah, so it's 508.
508.92 minus 497.05.
Chair, I'm sorry, that was the lower part of that ridge. The high ridge is 509.11.
509.11 minus
497.05.
12 feet.
Okay, so the current house is roughly 12 feet high from where its finished floor is today. Okay, so your new height roof ridge line, the one you've shown on this section over here, that point right there, what is that today?
15'3".
So 15-foot .3 or 3 inches?
15'3".
3?
15'3" inch.
So you're roughly
3 feet higher.
3 feet higher. Okay. And you're well below 17 feet 6 inches that's required for a single-family home anywhere else in the city. That's
So
what
we're
we
allowed
allow.
30 feet.
Well, you're allowed 30 feet, but
Oh, for design review, yes,
For
sir.
design review, anywhere else in the city, a single-story house can go up to 17 feet 6 inches without anybody looking at it. Okay, so I just want to make sure everyone clearly understands. So we've got a roof height that's 3 feet more than it is today. Is that what that's what you're telling me? Okay. The other thing I want to look at is the footprint that this project takes. That's what I want to know. Just right here. This is fine. So, as I read your set of plans, oops. Oh, my thing's right. Oh, there's ink. As I read it, that is the footprint of your house, as you're proposing. Correct?
Yes, sir. This plan is actually, this one does not reflect the 9 and 11 foot reductions.
No, this doesn't reflect that, so this gets smaller. So
That's
maybe
right.
there. Okay. So we're roughly talking about a footprint that's that big for a single-story house. Now, I'm going to take that and compare it now to that single-story house across the way. I'm going to take and compare that to that single-story house. That's the garage, carport?
Carport.
That's a deck, or is that part of the house?
This is an enclosed area.
That's part of the house.
It's like a large trellis
Okay.
piece of the house.
So, but let's just assume the house is this big. Okay. So that's compared to that house, compared to that house, compared to this house. Excuse me. This is a public hearing. The public has already had a chance to speak. This is broadcast, so I'm going to ask you to not make comments while the board is having its discussion. Thank you. And compared to that house. Okay? So these are all single-story houses, as I recall. And compared to this house down here. That's a two-story house.
This portion of it.
That piece right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right, let me go to my other questions. I had all these papers in front of me. Oh, there it is. All right. Let's see. So your new floor line compared to your old floor line is, what's the differential? This was it. What did you say a moment ago?
Yeah, your finished floor. What's the change?
490. No change in finished floor. It's the
So
same.
your finished floor is exactly where it is today.
Exactly. Because of
Okay.
our
So you've
garage.
got a 3-foot higher roof than you have today. Okay. And the deck distance on this side, let's now go back to your new drawings. You're now greater than the 15 feet that we require as a guideline. So you're at 17.3 over there. Okay. And, on the walls that you're talking about, you had mentioned walls over here and over there. You said they may be in bad shape. I wasn't able to actually walk onto the site. My views are only taken from what I can see walking along the street. So I really couldn't see those walls. What are they made of?
So what this, you see where we say the area of wall to be replaced on the site plan? There's a full stone retaining wall. It steps back. There was a concrete post with concrete infill panel, those built in like 4-inch panels. That's what you're seeing on this part of the survey plan. This is what we need to replace because this portion is just showing buckling. They haven't necessarily.
So what would you intend to replace it with?
What we're looking to do is, a full retaining wall for this portion that would be either block or concrete that would be faced.
With stucco or brick or whatever?
Stucco stone
Okay.
could be a potential.
And do you have the same condition on that side? No?
No, sir, this one is, we're looking to push this retaining wall over, but this wall's existing.
Okay. And then I want to go back and look at your elevations very quickly. So I understand what you're doing with the front entry there. And here I see a column like would I see that column as I looking through there? Would there actually be a column?
That's it right there.
That's it right there. Okay. So it's on because it's on the skew.
Exactly.
Okay.
This drawing is squared.
Right. Okay. So because it's squared to your front elevation, and then the where you were talking about the clear story above the kitchen and dining. So kitchen is here and dining's there.
Dining is here.
Oh, here.
Kitchen is this.
So kitchen. So this is the only high window you have facing, because I think previously you had windows all the way along here.
That's right. We've reduced the area of those windows.
Okay.
Now this was the La Vista Grande side.
Right. That's towards the street. Okay. And then over here, where's the floor line? This is the master bedroom.
So this thing floor level here. So basically like that.
Okay. So that's kind of the floor line there. Okay, so that's here. So if I have a 6-foot person, okay, and that's a 6-foot person. Okay, so the way I read this, the way you've drawn, this is above the bed, the headboard?
This is a bathroom, the master suite bathroom.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So this is above the vanity. So
Above the vanity.
labs are here.
The labs are below that?
We're not looking for that to be a clear glass.
And what are you thinking that'll be?
Frosted.
Frosted,
Because
okay.
we want privacy.
Okay.
We just want the daylight.
And this one is in the closet? Yes, no?
This is the laundry room.
That's the laundry, okay? And then I guess my final question, you showed us colors of the roof, but in general, what are you thinking about the colors of the house?
So the colors of the house, we're looking at an off-white, much like it's rendered here. And there was a comment about, somebody had mentioned that she didn't want white in the house, but we feel like because the predominant view is down on this house, the east side's not getting a reflective quality off the sun. So we feel like it's still very appropriate to keep it as a white, off-white color on the face. As you wrap around the back side, there's no angle. We've studied it from APS roundabout. That's the only time you have a view up to the house. And because of the decks, I just don't think you're going to see the body of the house.
And we're looking at this photograph taken in the late afternoon, so the shadow is on this side, but as I recall, that's kind of a pinky cream that's on the existing house, more or less. Okay. All right. Let's see. Then, do we have other questions? No. Okay. Before we go to comments, I want to address the issue of story poles. You chose to go out and do your own story poles, correct?
With the neighbor, correct.
Okay. And you chose because you were concerned about the neighbor, but apparently the rest of the neighbors didn't know that.
Well, they did, and it was addressed
Okay.
in the owner's letter.
Okay. So here is the challenge with story poles. This board has the purview to request story poles. We can request them in 3 different levels. Full level is typically, we would require that on a new site where we don't have any building at all, because it requires the grade level, story pole, so forth. It's a much more complicated process. We have a standard level, which gets a little bit more detailed, and then we have kind of a basic level that gets up to the heights of those things. But when we ask for those, they're to be put up in a certain time frame. They have to remain there for a certain period of time so that the neighbors are able to look at it, et cetera. So under our purview, there's a process that you go through to do that. You chose as a private owner and designer to do it on your own, and therefore there was no review or oversight by either this board or the city staff. So I want to make sure people understand that. That was done by the owner, the architect, working with their adjacent neighbor. It was not done under the purview of this board. If it was done under the purview of this board, we have certain requirements, regulations. The other thing to clearly understand, this board is very careful about when we request story poles for projects, because the level at which we request them can be quite expensive. This is not an afterthought. Requiring story poles is a very serious application of our power as a board. And so we use that rather judiciously, particularly if we have any suspicion at all that the project in its height circumstances is extreme, or that we feel that the size, scale, and bulk is extreme. And we'd want to see it, and we want to make sure the adjacent neighbors were able to review it. And we have, on occasion, required story polls. But I just want everyone to clearly understand that if we ask for story polls, there's a criteria that they have to be applicated in. Mr. Lamone, is there anything else I should share? Is that a good overview?
That is a good overview. Also, there is a documentation aspect of it that we would like to have a story pole plan prepared so we know what's going to be placed out.
So we actually see, staff sees an actual plan of how the story pole system
And we essentially sign off that this is, you can proceed on that basis.
Right, based on the board's selection of one of these three levels.
Right, because we don't want them installed incorrectly.
Okay. Let's go back now to, if there are no further questions, let's go to comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think the architect has done an extremely good job of re-massaging the house. And in particular, when I see the comparison of these two pictures, I think it's going to be a huge asset to the neighborhood. I think it's kind of an exciting house. I think the current house is kind of tired, so I can support this project. I understand the view concerns, but the fact that they make it a one-story house, it's 77% FAR. I think the quality of the materials are outstanding. I think it really revitalizes something that really needs to be revitalized in this respect. I'm not a proponent of modern architecture, but in this particular case, I think it's actually going to be a big improvement in the neighborhood. So I can support the project.
Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with Brian. I have to say, I think that this owner and the architects have bent over backwards to do the right thing by the neighbors, and I would not recommend story poles. This is a one-story home that is below even what a one-story home is allowed to be. So in my opinion, it does not merit story poles to go up. I think that they did it on their own was really a lovely gesture. And I think it's going to be a great asset to the neighborhood. I think the landscape plan looks really nice. And will also add to the visual beauty of this home, especially with these small trees they're going to put in the front. I don't know if the neighbors have had a chance to look at that, but that's going to help a lot. You're not going to probably even see the house once those are in. So I can definitely support this project moving forward.
Any comments, Lisa?
I will echo what they said because they said it all.
I'll weigh in a little bit. I'm in agreement with my colleagues. Just so that the neighbors understand, this is not a overly large home for the neighborhood, as I think we just demonstrated by looking at the footprint compared to other homes in the neighborhood, because it's a single story. And I understand that folks really have a challenge trying to picture things. That's always a challenge. And one of the challenges we have as architects is to convey to both our clients and to our community members the size, scale, and bulk of homes that get built in this community. That's the reason this board is here. One of the reasons this board was here because of the nature of concerns by City Council that we were going to allow buildings that would be termed by the press as McMansions. So one of the things we're very cautious about is proceeding and allowing projects to move ahead where the size, scale, and bulk are contrary to the fabric of the neighborhood. So I've been out to this neighborhood several times now, walked it. We've actually had 2 or 3 other homes just recently before this board that are within a block of this site. So I know it pretty well. Had time to look at it and compare it to the other homes in the neighborhood. Yes, it's not a small house. It's a large home, but it's not much larger and in some ways smaller than some of the other large homes in the same neighborhood. So in terms of the value that the neighbors put on the value of their homes, I'm sure that this home will meet that level. Now, one might not agree with a piece of contemporary architecture, but until a neighborhood designates itself as either historic or in some other way, and by the way, there's a process going through the city right now, which you may want to pay attention to, that would allow neighborhoods to do that. Until that happens, our board is not required to dictate a certain style. What we are required to do, that if a certain style is reviewed and approved, that it's of the highest standard that we as a board would look at. So I hope you understand that our job here is to look at size, scale, and bulk. And I want to go over that just for a second in relationship to, let's see. What I'm looking for is you had a, yeah, maybe it's on those, yeah, these things here. One of the things that we did ask for is this study through sections, and thank you for doing that, because it really does help us understand where this house sits in relationship to the other houses. And that's why I was quizzing you about the finished floors and the roof heights. And we're only really talking about a 3-foot differential. If you had another, where did those little computer-generated perspectives go?
Oh, they're on the main plan.
Oh, they're on this side. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk about size, scale, and bulk. You know, one of the things that we talk about when we talk about scale, and I would encourage you when you do these sketches to include people, because I'm venturing to guess that if I went back and looked at, that's a 6-foot high person compared to where you are. This being, I think you said 15 feet to here. Okay, so if that's 6, another 9 from here to here, and you're looking at it in perspective. That's what we talk about when we deal with scale. Scale is in relationship to the human person, and we look at that very carefully. So when someone looks at this without people there, they can conjure up all kinds of images of commercial buildings you may have seen that look much bigger. You can think about banks and schools and some other buildings. So that's what we talk about scale. When we talk about bulk, we talk about that form right there. And is that form different than some of the adjoining homes? And that's where I start to look at the footprint. That's why I did that little exercise a few minutes ago on this piece of tracing paper. You know, does the bulk of the house start to get bigger than the adjacent neighbors? So when we talk about size, scale, and bulk, that's what we're dealing with. When we talk about size, that's where we get into the issue of the FAR. That's why the city council, when they had this board come into play, they gave us the tool of using the FAR. And our guidelines really have us look at things that preferably are always below 85%. Now, we've approved some things that are higher. We've approved some projects that are 104%, 105%, but it's based on the size of the property. And one of the struggles that we generally have is, particularly when we're looking at projects over on the Mesa Bluffs that overlook the ocean, is we look at very large pieces of property which really reduce the FAR for very large homes, because in those cases we can't use the bluff area. They can't be built in the bluff area. So that's a real perplexing challenge. We have the same case where we have very steep lots where part of these lots are almost unbuildable. But in reference to this size of lot, in reference to the FAR that you now have 77%, that's our measuring tool to tell us whether or not a red flag needs to be raised to say that, wait a minute, this house is really large. When that FAR starts to bump up above 85%, then we've really got to pay attention. That's why when it came in at 86%, we were urging you to reduce it, and I think we appreciate the fact that you have reduced it. So I think from that perspective, this applicant has done as much as possible to meet the owner's request for a home and those that allow this to fit in the fabric of the neighborhood. And I think once this house is built, once the landscaping is in play, and I would urge you to consider a toned-down version of white, okay? I can appreciate you may want to go to a neutral light color, but I think a bright white house on this hillside maybe not be appropriate. But I think overall, I think once this house is completed, I think you're going to be very satisfied that the owner chose not to try to push a two-story house, that they really did take care to massage this thing so that it did nestle down into the site and into the neighborhood. So from that perspective, I would look to the board to make a motion. I believe my understanding is we can take any action possible, and I think at this point, I think the applicant would be looking for project design approval, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll like to make that motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the project for project design approval and make the, we would like to request that the applicant consider a bit of an off-white instead of a pure white for the body of the house. Other than that, we find that the project has consistency of appearance and compatibility and quality of architecture and materials, and that the owner has followed the good neighbor guidelines.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Now, before we quit, just so the audience understands, this project has a 10-day appeal period from today. The appeal goes directly to the City Council. So it will cost you money if you choose to make an appeal. Either the owner can make an appeal or the neighbors can make an appeal. I can tell you I've been in this board for almost 6 years now. The council has only ever overturned our ruling once in the few appeals that have traveled to the City Council. So it's something to think about very seriously. This is not an action that we take lightly. It's something we take very seriously. But I believe in the end, based on what just happened, the neighborhood will, I think, be happy that ultimately this is the project that was chosen to be built here rather than some other project that could have been built here. With that, we'll go to the next item. Mr.
Chair, was that
Yes, thank you, Mr.
continue to the full board for final or consent?
Yes, continue to the full
Continue
board.
to the full board
So
for final.
the board, it will be coming back to the full board for final once they get there, and that's another appealable decision. Okay?
Thank you, Chair.
Let's go to item number 3, 566 Arroyo Avenue.
Is that this one?
Extra. What's this? This is. What is this?
I don't know.
It's for La Vista Grande too. Yeah. There's too many
how are
names
you?
on the table.
Okay.
It's in it, right?
So this is a continued item. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. And Mr. Miller, do we have a comment yet? If you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure, I'm Dennis Thompson, architect.
Mr. Miller, if you could share with us what we commented on last time.
Yes, the motion was a majority of the board can support the proposed 99% of the maximum allowed floor to lot area ratio, FAR, since infill and change to the existing footprint are minimal in size, scale, and both of the minimal impact of adjacent neighbors. Provide a full roof plan, provide a north and south as well as east and west plan section details. Number 4, provide clear elevation details. Action taken by Motisha, seconded by Woolery. Action 4 is supported, 1 abstention. Bernstein opposed, Miller absent.
Okay, thank you. If you could share with us how you address those tenants.
Sure. First of all, I got an introduction to the definition of a basement or cellar, and so the FAR has dropped from 99%, or the staff was actually saying it was over. It's 94% now. And here's the roof plan. This is the street side of the house. So all of the additional space is behind the house, and the grade drops behind the house. So this is a two-story addition, but from the street, there's very little difference. So I now have added for the staff an existing and proposed plan. So the cross-hatched areas here are the infills. So it's a two-story addition in the center of the courtyard, and then a small addition to give the garage some depth. That's a one-story addition. And the elevations, I've done now 4 elevations more accurately, partly in order to understand the definition of cellar and the grade on the exterior. This is the main section through the building. Here's the other section that you asked for, and I'm sorry I didn't supply it with these drawings. The only change from the street is this little piece of skylight which shows over the house. So, and I'm changing that from a window to a door. So essentially, that's what you see from the street now, and that's what you'll see afterwards. Okay. And I think that is everything you asked for.
Okay. And you had the roof plan is on the other sheet.
Right.
Okay. Before we go to public comment, Mr. Lamone, is there any staff comments?
Just want to clarify. So you say that it qualifies as a cellar, and therefore that square footage does not count?
Half of the square footage does
You're
not
going
count.
the 50% rule now?
Right. So
Okay.
I did a whole exhibit to Caitlin.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public wishing to address this project? Mr. Lamone, did we get any communication?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right. Then the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Do we have questions?
Yeah, it's just a plaster siding, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Just it will match. All the materials will match.
And the
existing.
garage doors are just panel doors, or
There's a photo of them there. We're going to try to reuse them.
Oh.
They are painted the
garage
blue.
doors open.
Oh, are they? Yeah, sorry. They are painted the blue that matches the lower doors in the picture.
Okay.
And they are paneled.
Okay.
I think they might have a top row of glass. I'm not sure.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Let's go to comments. I'm assuming you're requesting project design approval.
Correct.
Can I see the minutes again? Sorry.
Yes, right here.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments? Any comments? Okay.
No.
Being no comments, the chair will look for a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay.
The board would like to give this project design approval based on following.
Based on turning on your mic.
Board would like to give this project design approval based on the following comments. We appreciate that you have used consistency in appearance, compatible architecture, and quality materials, and we would like to give you design approvals.
Okay. Is that coming back to the full board or consent?
I'm sorry. That is coming back to the full board.
Okay. So the motion on the floor, is there a second to that motion?
I'll make a second. I don't do make
Okay. So there's a second and a motion. Is there further comment?
No, we don't. Can I amend my motion?
Yes, ma'am. You made it.
I would like to amend it to come back to consent calendar.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the seconder?
It certainly is.
Okay. So that's the motion. It goes to consent, not back to the full board. Any other comments? I have one. I would hope that when you do come back for final, and I'm assuming, I don't know who will be on consent, that you pay attention to the material of the little skylight, because we don't want it to be the Luxor model with the light.
Well, let's
spraying
talk
up at
about
the
that.
top.
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I've done these kinds of things before. I've used a one-piece plexiglass dual-glazed skylight.
Right.
So what is a Luxor?
The thing at Las Vegas.
Referring to Las Vegas, where the Luxor pyramid, they shine a light that goes straight up into the sky.
Yeah, no.
So we just want to be careful.
I mean, I did hear a comment last time about the night sky coming out of a skylight, but skylights bring light in during the day and they let light out at night.
But you can get them in various glazing colors, so just whatever you think.
I'll pay attention to that.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I suggest we make some NPO findings with respect to the size of the addition, since it's going over the 85%?
Oh, yes, that's
yes.
Compatible, it's hidden however you want to.
That the board finds the FAR that is now 94% as a result of the consideration that partial 50% of the garage is considered cellar, that we accept the 94% FAR as well. Because
it's an infill.
Because it's
that
an
was our basic discussion.
It's an infill, and it doesn't impact the overall size, bulk, and scale of the structure.
What they said.
Okay. Kathleen, did you catch that? Okay. Yeah, that's important in case somebody decides to challenge us. Okay, so that's the motion. That's okay with the seconder of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Hearing none, and Chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go to...
You could take 2 of these copies.
Let's go to item number 4, 1631 Shoreline Drive.
Is this for sale? The Bambi next door?
You can have it.
Oh. This is a new item, so I'm going to read into the record the proposal. This is a proposal for alterations and a 591 square foot of additions to a one-story single-family residence to address violations in Enforcement 2008-00161 related to the remodel and as-built retaining walls and decks along the bluff, which were removed without approvals or permits. Proposed total of 2,783 square feet on a 20,100 square foot lot located in the Hillside Design District is 60% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. This is here for comments only because it's required to go to the Planning Commission. If you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Tom Oxner, project architect.
Charles McClure, landscape architect.
Okay, if you could share with us what you're doing.
Yes, so just clarification off the top. The project description is slightly increased. The size of the addition is 853
versus 591.
Versus 591, and the FAR goes to 65% instead of 60.
Okay.
Okay, and then
Excuse me. Can I clarify why that happened?
It was partially it was an error by the plans when they were originally submitted, and the floor plan basically accounted for that. But when I reviewed it this morning, I noticed that the square footages were wrong. I submitted these plans with a blue form this morning, and okay.
I wasn't aware of that, but
Okay.
we don't notice projects and then change the size of the project.
Oh, okay,
That's sort of a switch.
Yeah,
So-
it was the same. It's really the same project. It's the numbers were not correct.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
We don't notice projects that have wrong numbers. So
Okay.
I'm just going to caution the board that they have the choice to either renotice it or give you some preliminary direction, because I don't like to have a project that doesn't convey the accurate project.
Let me,
Understood.
Mr. Long, let me ask you one other question. Because this is here for comments only, it has to go to the Planning Commission, and it's going to the Planning Commission because?
Probably cost a development permit on a bluff.
Okay. So today we can't do anything more than give it comments. When it returns, does it get noticed again?
No, not typically, but I would recommend we do that.
Okay. So part of our motion could be renoticing, correct?
And to limit the direction today, because it's unfair without a proper notice to give comments on direction to change the project.
Okay.
Unless you reduce the size to what was noticed.
Okay. All right. Well, in any case, can you show us what you're doing?
Yes, so scope of this project is sort of twofold. One, there are some violations that Chuck has a fair amount to go over with you and his mitigation to those. And some of those were violations of small interior pieces of the floor plan, which are now kind of not important because we're kind of gutting the inside. The project consists, it's a 20,000 acre, 20,000 square foot, 20,000 square foot parcel, and this is the bluff side right here.
So it's going to the ocean then.
Right, so this is an infill. A good portion of the square footage is an infill here, as was the last project. 2-bedroom addition out off of the front side, and then a small space here. So the existing house is a bit unfortunate. It's really odd. It's got a 10'8" plate with a 3 and 12 pitch, and the windows are at 6'8", and it's just a box. So it's really a challenge to do something with it without completely taking it down. So the concept is to really try to create some new roof forms and extend the roof down with some eyebrows around the perimeter.
Have you done any mold abatement for the building? Have they talked about? Just kind of looks like there's something going on.
Yeah,
let's wait till we get the questions.
Sorry,
there's a lot going on. So we're really going to go through and reorganize the whole interior, new windows, and it's basically going to be gutted. This is the demolition plan, which we've established maintaining the perimeter footprint and keeping the existing roof structure. There's a 10'8" ceiling throughout, so we've got some nice volume. The challenge becomes, what do you do to turn it into something that improves on it? So the proposed floor plan extends 2 bedrooms out off the front side, and it encloses that interior space and turns it into a living room, and really reorganizes the floor plan and puts a master bedroom on that southwest side. So in terms of the forms, we've got the existing elevations here on the left side, and as you can see, there's a 3 and 12 pitch roof, and so the concept was to find an architectural style that we could extend the roof eaves forward and kind of bring it down to a human scale, and in what we did was kept the ridge. I've got a roof plan that shows we kept the ridge across the center portion of the structure and added some higher pitched gables, as well as reframed the garage low pitch, actually reframed that to a steeper pitched gable, and then extended the eaves down with a heavy timber feel that allows us to kind of get them projected out beyond the existing facade.
Good fix.
So the roof plan on the next page kind of gives better clarification on the concept. So the ridge would stay the same. There's actually these skylights on the south side which would stay, but basically the plate throughout the entire roof would stay. It's actually 12-inch ceiling joists that just run all the way across. So the top of those would actually be up around 11 and change. But so the idea was to add an entry gable, reframe the garage gable, and then a gable over the bedrooms. And on the back side, keep the pitch and turn it into an eyebrow, and then add a small gable over the kitchen. And then this would be an early sketch of what the detailing would be in terms of the heavy timber and the eyebrows that would kind of help bring down that roof extension around the perimeter of the building. So with that, Chuck, you want to get into your...
You can stay there, it's okay.
Speak into the microphone because it's being recorded.
So some of the exterior zoning violations were these retaining walls in the back were never permitted. And Adam Simmons is a geologist that, or hydrologist and geologist who's advised us on the concept is he finds these walls to be in very nice shape. It's a 6-inch concrete caisson that he says goes down into very solid material, and these walls are not, angling or sloping or failing even 1%. So he thinks they're very viable and solid, and he also recommends that they stay in place because removing them would add to the stability of the bluff. There's also 3 drains that currently exist on the property, 1, 2, 3, that currently take water from this lower terrace on down to the beach, and he's recommended that we remove those. He's also recommended that we remove this concrete pad, and then all of the water that hits the roof is being directed, out to the front and is being treated, per the stormwater program. And then he's recommending that any water that lands in the back here be allowed to soak in, and then actually just be allowed to go ahead and migrate down and sheet flow over the bluff. No more concentrated flows. And then out front, there's existing, double entrance driveway, and we're going to remove one of those. So it'll just be a traditional driveway in, and then there's a nice horizontal hardwood fence that's going to be installed on both sides, and that'll also come across the front to give a little bit of privacy to the front. We're removing one bad tree out front that's in the 20-foot setback, so we've got an application in with the arborist on that. And then we go on to, there's a detail of the fence that you'll see from the front, so it's 1 by 6 boards horizontal. And then we go on to irrigate it and plant it. A couple of new trees out front, and the rest is existing landscape to remain. And then we've got some lemonade berry that's going to fill in these terraces to pin those terraces down. And then just we have actual permeable paving to absorb the stormwater. And then this is this is our tree removal application. And this is Adam Simmons' report, geologic report. And then there we have the survey.
Okay.
That's all.
Anything else? That's it? Okay. Mr. Lamone went away. Is there anyone in the public wishing to address this project? I'm going to temporarily close public comment until Mr. Lamone returns, because I don't know if we have any written comment, and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions? Lisa.
Question for Chuck. The Pinus sunburgia. I'm just kind of curious about that choice, being that pines are really struggling, and
yeah, we can sure look at that. We're not. It was just kind of a thought.
Yeah, just curious about if there was any real
study
motivation behind that.
And then a super outstanding reason.
And then the garage. So there's no opportunity for 3-point turn. You'd be having to back up into shoreline.
Right. Many of the houses
do that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Those are my questions.
And the visibility is quite good.
Okay.
Other questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Before we go to comments, and I do have some questions, Mr. Lamone, did we get any written comment?
Does not appear so.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So just so I understand the big picture, is the property line on the ocean side actually here, or does it actually go that way?
Way on down.
So it goes way that way. Okay. And then in the front, in here, you say existing landscaping, but you took out a driveway. So what really is going in here?
Oh, that's a good point. I guess you've got us on that. We'll have to.
So we don't have any. You haven't thought that through.
No,
okay.
that's right.
Okay, and then and then on this fence here, I was assuming, but you didn't say so. Is that 42 inches high?
Yeah, no, it's
Well, you can actually get higher fences now if you go through a mod process.
Well, I understand that, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
So what's your intention?
Our intention is to get an administrative mod for a taller fence in front.
What height?
6 feet.
Okay. And the way I read that fence, it was the way you've got it drawn is a horizontal fence. Okay.
It's 6 feet. Is that right, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. You talked about having an engineer look at those front retaining walls, but has a structural engineer looked at them?
No.
Okay. Let's see. And I think that was my questions. Other questions?
Yes, for Chuck too. So in front of that fence, you are planting some
Yeah, we'll
plantings
come back with
in front of there, and the driveway cut. Are you going? Is that just staying, or is
remove and
you're going to remove
sidewalk.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back with the revised front landscape.
Other questions?
Yeah, one more. And so I see this line here that looks like a patio edge. Then what's in here?
That's a piece of drought-tolerant lawn.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't see a hatch.
It's that verde.
Oh, buffalo grass.
The owner's keen on that.
We're, so I was just curious, since you're on the bluff, there's usually a line that shows the...
Oh, that's right, the 75
the setback,
and 50. You're right.
Yeah.
Your office mentioned that to me, and that's so far it's not on the plan.
It's not on
we'll
the plan.
We'll get it on there.
Because I don't know, wherever that is, you're not probably going to be able to add a lot of water up here to the top of that bluff by keep that buffalo grass alive. That's an awful lot of buffalo grass.
Adam Simmons said that he goes, everything else you're proposing I'm with, and he's kind of the guru, it would seem. Okay. So I'm not sure how to respond to that.
He didn't have a reaction to the lawn amount. Okay.
Other questions? Okay, let's go to comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I only have one comment. Once you figure out your square footage correctly on record, and this also does not determine whether I approve the project or not, but it kind of bothers me in terms of an aesthetic point of view, and it's the roof, the way you address the roofs here in two places, and I just find it strange. You pull the roof across here, and you pull the roof across here. I would prefer to see something where they're segregated, or this was segregated and this was differentiated some way. That's the only thing, but it's not a make or break issue for me.
Other comments? This is scaling to be an 8-foot door, so that's the other trick you're using to kind of get this lower. So that's
a lot of the new units, especially if they're the big rooms.
So this is 8 foot, and then these guys are back to the normal 6'8" height. Okay. Let's see. I guess from the perspective of what you're trying to do, I'm kind of okay with it. What I'm more concerned about is the disconnect between your design and the landscaping design. Part of the problem we have along Shoreline Drive is everybody wants to be Montecito, and they all want to have big hedges or big fences right on the front. And I just don't think that behooves the neighborhood correctly. I think as under the rules, you can get this back 10 feet, and then you are outside of that restriction of 42 inches, I think. So that's only another 4 feet. So that's something you might explore. The other thing is the disconnect, and I know everybody's doing them because I see them all over the place, is the horizontal boards on the fence. And that kind of connotes to me a very contemporary approach to the design. And it doesn't, in my view, jive with what is being shown on this sketch. So I think a fence design that's more compatible with the design approach of the architecture is probably going to be a little bit more palatable.
I agree. Just to interrupt, I was working on this for the owner, and then Tom got involved.
I understand how it goes. So I'm just saying that's you need to kind of get that coordinated. And then I, as my landscape colleagues we'll all be interested to see how you're really going to landscape the front and what's going to happen there now, because I think landscaping will also help your architectural scaling issue. What goes in front of this house and where it sits in relationship to the face of the house, and how you set that up as the landscaping starts leaving, the composition of landscaping as it leaves from the curb back to the face of the house. And I think what would really be important in my mind is for you to really understand what's happening on each side, the homes on each side, in terms of landscaping. Because one of the things that happens on that portion of Shoreline Drive, because, as you pointed out, it's a very wide boulevard now, and that goes to your backing out issue for automobiles, but it also presents a different scale on Shoreline Drive than if you're further down when the road narrows. So paying attention to how that landscape composition is probably pretty important, maybe even more important than probably the architectural approach. But so that's my kind of overall comments. So any other comments?
Yes. I
Yes.
have some. Yeah, I'd be real. I'm actually with the chair of the board about taking this fence back. It's just way too
Sounds
close
likely.
to the sidewalk to be that high, and the change in style would be also really good. And then I'm going to be real curious to see, these are doors coming out the front there, are they not? Yeah. So what's your paving?
Yeah, sure.
What's that going to look
We'll
like
get
in
that all
there?
tightened up.
And the plantings and placement of trees is going to be really critical, I think, in front of this house. So and species. I also agree. All the pines in town are dying, so I don't know. That's really a good thing to plant another one right now while we're in the drought. It's sad.
No,
It's
I got a
sad.
note on that.
Yeah. Okay. That's all.
Okay. Other comments? Right. Then the chair would look for a motion. I would encourage you to make a motion that addresses the re-noticing issue because of the size, and define your comments accordingly, because the applicant can either decide to deal with Planning Commission and re-noticing, or however they work with staff to get it back into proper alignment.
Okay, I'll make a motion. The board would like to make the following comments. First off, the board, due to the fact that the square footage is incorrectly labeled on the plans, that a re-noticing will probably be required, reflecting the accurate square footage. The board also wants to makes the following comments: that the board appreciates the style of the architecture and can support that. Regarding the landscaping, the board feels that the front fence is too tall and too close to the sidewalk, and would like the landscape architect to restudy the style and design that it's also more consistent with the style of the architecture. The feel that the evergreen type of planting should be replaced with a more drought-tolerant plant, I guess. The board, let's see, what else? I can't think of nothing else is coming up. That's my motion at this time.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there further comments? Further
Mr. Chair,
discussion? Yes.
Can I clarify Mr. Sweeney's comments about looking to each side of the homes for the landscaping? Is that relative to?
Yeah. What were you
trying to examine? there?
Basically, it's the street composition. So how it looks in terms of its
Should
relationship.
that be something that should?
Should help us
recommend
look
an
at it.
overall comprehensive elevation of the adjacent homes on each side.
Thank you.
That's fine with the seconder.
Seconder, okay. Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Okay, we'll see you back here
Can I
once
ask
you
a
get
quick
started
question?
out. Yes.
Do you think a structural engineer is necessary for some sort of analysis?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Sorry.
He wouldn't have said it.
Shouldn't ask an architect.
You can take two of these.
Okay. Let's go to item number 5. 1035 Coyote Road. This is a new item, so I'm going to read that as the applicant's coming up. I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a proposal for a change of use of the existing non-conforming 428 square foot single-story building located within the required 35-foot setback from accessory to single-family use. A portion of the building was permitted as a workshop and storage building at 302 square feet, but is actually 328 square feet. Construction of a new 361 square foot two-car carport is also proposed. Zoning modifications are requested to allow the conversion of the workshop storage to be converted to a single-story residential unit, and for the construction of a new two-car carport located within the required front setback. Other site improvements include the demolition of structures within the required setbacks. The proposal will address violations listed in enforcement 2015-00314 and ZIR 2015-0053. Proposed total of 809 square feet on a 25,177 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 18% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. This is here for comments only because it requires modification in front of the staff hearing officer. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Rick Starnes, architect and applicant.
Okay, if you could show us what you're doing.
Okay, if you turn to the second page, actually, I'll show you the existing conditions. A little clearer. So basically, there are two structures on this property built in 1971. The larger one here, and then there's a smaller storage accessory building here. And we're proposing to convert it to a legal residence, which it's actually been used as for 40 years. But to bring it up to conformity, we meet the parking requirements. We're having to add a two-car carport. And because of the constraints of the topography of the property, you can see the flat area. I mean, it's 0.6 of an acre, so it's a very small area of a building pad for the home and also the carport. So on the first page, the site plan, you can see where we're proposing to put the carport. We're going to actually remove the accessory building and place the carport in pretty much the same location that the accessory building is, and convert the workshop into a residence.
Wow.
Do you have elevations?
So we're not changing anything on the existing residence. It's got a very whimsical
Hobbit house.
field. Yeah, exactly, which we like. So we're going to keep that as is. As you can see, it's got a little kitchenette in it and a bathroom, and so we're hoping it's not going to be. So we're going to be dealing with some building department issues, converted to residence. But
So just to be clear, this footprint is now 428 square feet.
right,
At some point, it was approved for 302 square feet.
which was this part here, and at some point they added. It may have happened right away. They added this closet and bathroom.
Okay, that got it up to the 428.
That's right.
And the 328 is referring to what this footprint was.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's clear. So basically, from where you are today, you're not adding any other square footage?
No.
Okay. Okay, anything else that you want to share with us?
Well, the carport, we're proposing, actually, we don't have to do it, but to meet the parking requirements, I'm trying to keep it to minimize the structure. I'd like to not even see it from the street, so that's the reason for the flat roof, which the residence actually has a flat roof also, so we're kind of mimicking the flat roof of the house and adding a few details from the house. This outrigger detail here is a reflection of what they have on the house too. And then I'd like to see, I'm sloping the roof away from the street so that from the street you won't see the flat roof, and I'd also like to see vines grow on these columns and eventually cover the whole structure to make it just go away, basically.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Staff, do they need to know anything at this point?
No.
Okay.
What I would like to mention, I noticed that there's no action here. We've been through a full DART process. Staff's thoroughly reviewed this project. So I'm just wondering why we're not having action today.
Well, because you have to get a modification. As I understand it, you've got to go in
Right.
front of the staff hearing officer. Can you
For modification.
elaborate, Mr. Lamone?
That's correct. You cannot get an approval. All you can get is positive comments that would help you in achieving modification approval.
Okay.
So I want to come back to that in a moment, but is there anyone in the public wishing to address this project? Mr. Lone, did we get any public
No, we
comment?
did not on
Okay.
this project.
The chair will then close public comment and bring it back to questions. And I want to go to questions first, just to clarify. The project description talks about the fact that, the way I read this, the existing footprint of one of these structures sits within 35-foot setback. So could you clarify for that?
You can see the setback here.
Okay, so this is the setback line.
That's right.
Saying this is the right-of-way line.
That's it.
Okay, so that's the road right-of-way. Okay, so that's the 35.
Right.
So it's this piece of the house you're having to get a modification for, and also for having the carport sit there.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So as Mr. Lamone said, typically what you're looking for is positive comments from this board before you might wish to appear before the staff hearing officer.
Okay.
Okay? Because staff hearing officer will take our comments under consideration when they determine whether or not they're going to allow these to remain or be built in that setback line.
For the modification.
For the modification.
Okay.
Because the hearing officer could say, no, I'm not in agreement. You can't keep it there or you can't build it there.
So he's waiting for your comments.
But they're waiting, yeah, they'll be waiting for our comments. So that's kind of the process here.
Okay.
Once you're done with that, then you have to return to us. After you've gotten a decision from the staff hearing officer, then you'll have to return to us for our formal action. And there's two things you're going to receive. You're going to get project design approval. That's basically approving the preliminary concept design.
Mm-hmm.
And then final design when you finish working drawings.
Okay.
Okay? Now, I can share with you, given what you're showing me, that you might be able to achieve that all in one meeting,
Okay.
but that means you'd have to have complete working drawings done.
So the carport would have to be engineered.
And you'd have to gamble that we're going to be in favor of the project as it's initially designed.
Right.
Okay? So that's a gamble on your part.
Right.
Okay, so just so you understand what the process is. So let's go to comments. Comments.
Questions still? Or
Well,
did we-
questions,
did
excuse
we-
me, I'm sorry.
So I see, this is Adobe brick made, it looks like to me.
Yes, there's Adobe and brick. And
I guess I have a question for staff. I mean, are there not some rules and regs about any building structure, any structure that's habitable, that it has to be of certain size and construction?
Yes, no, that'll be, the size requirement is 400 square feet for a dwelling unit, typically. And structurally, they're going to have to provide some evidence that it's built to code or it needs to be modified to be resistant.
I was going to say, because
who knows how it was constructed.
I'd be pretty surprised if it was to code, I mean, the way it, but, okay.
Other questions? Okay. I was up looking at the house from the road. And I can tell you that fireplace doesn't look like that. It's cantilevered at this end, so.
just a little bit right
Yeah,
here. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so you need to kind of
Just
make
a
sure
little
your
bit there.
drawings reflect what's out there, particularly as reference to Ms. Woolery's question about.
Actually, I show here on plan, you can see, I know what you mean, that little piece cantilevers out.
Yeah, it cantilevers
over
out,
the
yeah.
chimney,
And then on the carport, you talked about having a flat roof and material. So what's the material you're thinking about that would be on the roof?
Oh, it'd be just a flat built-up roof.
Did it have gravel top or just a flat?
Gravel top.
So a gravel top of some color of some sort?
Yeah, and I'm sloping it away from the street so you won't see it, and the idea is the vines.
Okay, and then the general color?
Colors, I haven't thought about that yet.
One of the things you'll need to have is complete color board when you come back.
Right.
Okay, other questions?
The intent would be to match the house color.
I guess one other question I have is, you talked about planting some vines. Oops, where are we at?
Side plan, yeah.
Some vines here
Right.
at some point on some of these posts. Are you doing any other landscaping?
No.
So basically, it's going to pretty much be as is.
Natural.
Okay. There is a fence out here now, so that's going to remain.
All fences are being removed.
So the fence are going away.
Fences, this wall is staying, obviously, but all the fencing, all these railroad ties, there's a structure against this wall that's being removed. A lot of the existing things are being removed.
Okay, and the oak trees there's oak trees all over the place. They're all staying where they are?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Other questions?
Yeah. No bedrooms?
No. There's a little loft above that big room that people have been using that as a bed. See the loft outlined right here? And there's a ladder you climb up to get up, so the bed's up there.
I see. Okay.
You need to purchase, there's 2 new books at the bookstore.
Living Small.
Living Small, Living Little Houses. Quite delightful little books.
Okay. It's actually very charming inside.
Other questions?
It's got a lot of character.
The roof structure is existing.
Yeah.
And what's the material on the roof now?
It's flat gravel.
And what color is the gravel? Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Now, is this seen from the neighbors? The neighbors see this? Or?
Can they see it?
Yeah.
From the street, you can see a little bit of it, not
Yeah,
much.
you can see, if you've been up there, you can see the house. You can see the structure from the street, but you kind of have to stop and get out and walk over there.
Okay.
All right, let's go to comments. This is here for comments only, and obviously if he's would like to proceed to the staff hearing officer, he's going to be looking for positive comments.
I guess my comment is the size, bulk, and scale is so small. The house is so unorthodox. As long as it passes code, I guess. I mean, it's not much I could say. I wish you luck.
Mr. Miller, what might be helpful is if you could look at it as whether it meets the minimum appearance standards, aesthetic standards, or whether you can do something to enhance it. I think that's what we all look at for as-bills.
Well, that's a good question. I'm a little uncomfortable with the roofing structure. I'm thinking a more traditional roof would be more appropriate for this kind of structure.
Talking about the carport or the house?
The house, but you're not. Are you permitting the house or the carport?
He's trying to get the house as is.
As is.
It was built for a different function, so
Right.
they're now trying to convert it to a residential use. So it is fair game to look at it as a house. Would you have approved it this way, in this manner?
Well, I don't. What comes up for me is the inconsistency of the tile roof for the little buildings, but then the flat.
Yeah.
I would think that these 2 roofs should match.
That was added at a later time, the
Yeah.
lean-to, right.
Yeah, but the lean-to actually is a more preferable look with the tile roof. I think I'm going to stop my comments and hear what other on the board, but
other comments?
The roofs are kind of strange to me.
Okay, I'm going to comment because I actually went out and looked and walked.
Yeah.
This is a delightful little structure.
It is.
I think you're doing the right thing. Okay? It reminds me a lot of what one would see on the back roads to the back road from Santa Fe to Taos. Okay?
Right.
This is exactly what you see.
Right.
This is a little hand-built house.
Mm-hmm.
It's representative of particularly that portion of Mountain Drive up there.
Right.
Okay? If you look at the history of Mountain Drive,
Yep.
okay, Mountain Drive, the actual Mountain Drive is just like over there. This is
Right.
before you get to the intersection. This is very indicative of the original origin of how all those homes were built up there. And we've actually approved much larger homes just across this canyon. This drops down and then it rises up, and we just approved a big home over here. So I think you're doing the right thing. I don't have a problem with the style or the roof, whatever. It's germane to Kier. Obviously, I'm going to be concerned about the colors and the paint chips and whatever, but I think your approach is totally acceptable. I would like to see a little bit more clearer understanding of how you're going to treat the landscaping. In other words, what pieces are going to be retained? Are you going to have, because one of the problems you have up here, as all these homes have up here, is fire. So how much clearing are you going to need to do around this house? And then once you do that, what remains? And are you going to use native landscaping where you need to supplement, et cetera? You know, part of the challenge coming around this curve, even though this is up a little higher and tucks back in, you still have car lights here. So, you know, and there's a lot of oak trees, so you may want to think about the fact that this is nestled So you may need to supplement some of your landscaping once you get this all cleaned up, because this is quite messy right now. You have a big dumpster here. So,
and the fence and everything.
and the fence and all. So, kind of getting that a little clear for us, I think would be pretty important, but I think the general approach is perfect, and I could tell the staff hearing officer that in this case, building in this setback, given the road right-of-way and the real footprint of the road, doesn't really present a huge challenge, particularly when we're looking at all the other homes that kind of align this roadway as you drive up from Sycamore Canyon.
Mr. Chair, could you comment
Yes.
on the suitability of the carport?
I think the carport is opposed to a garage or some other edifice. I think in this case, a carport is supportable. One of the things that you look at, and that's why I kind of refer to the Mountain Drive character of the neighborhood.
The commune started almost.
Yeah, and a lot of people, there's a lot of properties up here where there's cars everywhere. I mean, there's cars parked all over the place. If you drive up, the next house up has cars all over the place. So I don't think that's out of line for this neighborhood. If we were looking at a neighborhood close-knit in town, I'd probably have a whole different feel. Right. But given where you are and what you're trying to do, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Any other comments? Okay, the chair would look for a motion. And the motion would be in the context that I'm assuming the applicant wants to move forward to the staff hearing officer.
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
The board would like to give this project positive comments to go on to the staff hearing officer, and we find that the violation into the setback is acceptable, and that is my motion.
Okay, it's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You have some peek up. I think we'd like to elaborate more a little bit on why you feel the encroachments are acceptable, and restate the carport's acceptable for this type of neighborhood. I think I'd like to have that in the motion. It'll help the staff hearing officer.
Thank you. We'd like to also add that the carport as proposed is accepted, and that we accept the encroachment into the setback given the large nature of the road and the surrounding neighborhood, and how the driveway sits on the street. Wait a minute. And how the building is situated on the property. We're okay with the encroachment.
Okay, is that acceptable to the second? Who made the second?
I lost you. Can you say it again?
I got lost in the middle of that.
Okay, can I offer, given the time, that the board recognizes that the existing building and the proposed location for the carport is acceptable because it's indicative of the rural nature of this area along Coyote Road, and its originality, or its origin, based on the original structures constructed on Mountain Drive that formed the language and character of the neighborhood, and that this project, or that the existing structures reflect that. And the location, given the large road right-of-way and the 35-foot setback, does not really alter the character of the adjoining neighborhood. Did you catch all that, Kathleen?
That sounds good. Thank you for amending
Is that acceptable?
motion. Yes.
Is that acceptable to the
That's
second?
acceptable.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that cover, Mr. Lamont, what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, thank
Now
you.
they know where Bilbo Baggins went. He moved there.
Okay, let's go to, now only a half hour behind. Let's go to 1120 Unita Plaza. This is a new project, so as the applicant's moving forward, I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a proposal to demolish an existing 402 square foot garage and 180 square foot shed and construct a new 499 square foot two-car garage with a 499 square foot of accessory space above.
Whoops.
With a new 140 square foot second story deck and a 100 square foot roof deck. The existing development on site consists of 1,286 square feet, one-story single-family dwelling with a detached 402 square foot two-car garage. The property is located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Proposed total of 2,281 square feet. On an 11,760 square foot lot is 58% of the maximum floor-to-lot area ratio. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is required or is provided. Project requires coastal review. If you could introduce yourself, please.
My name's Tom Henson, and this is Jacob Nixdow, and we're taking over for Peter Becker. We're forming a new firm, Becker Henson Nixdow. I'm sad to say Peter Becker passed away this week.
We wish you luck.
Thank you. It's especially sad. He was really passionate about this project. This is Talia, the owner, and she's also a landscape designer. Their garden's really beautiful. And
you have to
talk into the
mic.
black thing.
So if you could go ahead and share what you're doing. What are you proposing?
what we're doing is the house is very small now. It's only
And if you're
13
going to
square
refer
feet.
to that, it needs to be on that.
It is.
Put it over here on the camera.
I'll refer. The house is
whenever you're going to talk to, it just needs to be.
The house is only 1,300 square feet, and the owners needed a little more space, a hobby room, art studio, and rather than add to the mass of the house, the idea was to have a garden pavilion on top of the existing garage, more or less. The garage is moving back a little bit, and that would maximize, possibly give you some views of the ocean and allow the massing to stay small and have the village feel that Peter loves so much, and give them a place to work and look out over the garden, having two masses on the property rather than one. This location is really important. It's surrounded by mature Bismarckia palm and two king palms, and then there's an existing bamboo hedge along this property line and oak trees and eugenias, so it's very green and lush here. So it doesn't.
These also act as kind of screening, natural established trees of with screening.
So
the garden itself, the owner being a landscape designer is a very important part of the overall area. A couple things to point out in terms of there's a terrace here that we've made a conscious effort to keep it more than 15 feet away from the property lines on each side, so that it looks into their own yard and as as a little peak towards the ocean. But we've also sunk the structure down a few feet so that it's down into the earth in an attempt. Let's see if we can look at to keep the massing for this on the minimal side. Let's see. Here, kind of the elevation here, and it's dug down into it. The finished floor of that itself is below grade.
Same character as the house. It's a contemporary
metal roof, kind of contemporary
stucco
design.
Natural stucco color. From the beginning, we've been concerned about privacy for everybody. The windows on the north elevation are up high. They're higher than they're higher than anyone could look out. They're just for light. and the existing hedge that's along the property line makes it so that the people in the house next door couldn't even see the building. We'd like 12 feet seemed like the sweet spot for the hedge. Without administrative approval, it's limited to 8 feet, but with administrative approval, it can go up to 14 feet. But 12 seemed like an optimal height because that maximizes the amount of light the neighbors can get without interfering, without having either neighbor be able to see each other.
Okay. Anything else? That's it?
Do you want to, would you like to,
if you want to show that, then just put it over here, please. Just because the camera's going to see it.
So we thought it was kind of important to emphasize that there's already a very mature grove of trees kind of in this area here, to also show the relationship of this smaller house. Forgive us, these are kind of massing models. They're not all flat top houses, but to show kind of the size of this is a little bit smaller than most of the surrounding neighbors. There is a two-story in the vicinity as well.
And one across the street, too.
Okay, thank you. Put that back. Let's put it that way, please. Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, we have one public speaker. Bill, is it Sturk?
And there's a letter there, but I think it might be
letter.
Oops.
Which I have right here.
Might be the same folks. I'm not sure.
There's a Patricia Stark. Is that?
I'm Bill Stark.
You related to Patricia?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. You need to speak into that microphone, please.
Actually, our concern is not really with the second story so much as with the closeness of the second story to our house. We're the neighbors right here, and currently there is a bamboo hedge along here, which the Rostons have. Okay, good, you have that. The Rostons have proposed for screening. Though this hedge, I think, is really overgrown at the currently. It's hard to tell from this picture, but it's more in the 20 to 25 foot range than in the neighborhood of 12 feet. 12 feet would be a lot better. However, the light comes into our house from this direction. So if there's a second story here, we won't be able to get the daylight that we currently get through the bamboo hedge. It doesn't screen out all the light. But with the second story this close to our house, there are actually on this, I've shown the location of our windows. Here's the second story proposed window. Here are our windows. This structure will screen out a lot of the open sky that we currently see from these two windows. So if the second story could be moved away from the property line, we would really have no objection to the project. We just think that second story is too close. Now, I don't know if that involves moving the whole structure away from the property line or simply stepping the second story back. Also, the fact that this second story window has a clear view into these two windows. Our sense of privacy is reduced by having that second story window. And they could lose the second story window. I don't think I looked at the plans, they have windows on the other three sides. I don't think that would really impact the light in the house, especially considering that's on the north side. of the house.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, there are no other second stories on our side of the street. But as I say, the second story isn't really the issue. It's just the closeness of the second story to our existing house.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wanting to address this other than the one letter? Did you receive anything else, Mr. Lamont?
No.
Okay, thank you. Chair is going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. I want to just clarify. So, did you do the solar? You had a.
Yes.
I thought you had a solar ordinance.
It complies with the solar ordinance.
Here shown.
Okay. So the city solar ordinance requirement is that line right there?
This line right
Okay.
there.
And
12 feet up.
just so I'm clear, on the footprint of this building is
This.
right here. So this is the roof line?
Yes.
Okay. So the closest point is still beyond the 6-foot setback?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a 6-foot setback requirement. The closest point appears to be 6 foot something.
Maybe 7, but most of it's more like 10.
Okay. So it's
10 to
back
12.
10 feet, so it's 4 feet further than the current setback requirement.
We're limited by existing mature planting here that we want to keep to screen.
Okay. And your floor-to-floor heights are, I'm trying to read here, 9 feet?
9 feet.
8, 10. And a 4 and 12 pitch. Okay.
To match the house, and we're dug down 2 feet into the grade.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the board for questions. Who has questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Questions? Lisa?
No, not now. I have a question.
Yes.
So if the solar access line is fairly meaningless if there's a bamboo hedge that's 25 feet tall, however, right?
They're going to get more light after this is trimmed down than they had before.
So you're intending to trim the bamboo down?
Yes.
Well, that doesn't trim very well. That's one of the ugliest things one can do to bamboo.
That was my question to my landscape colleagues. Is bamboo the appropriate
No.
hedge?
It's not, because you can't really trim it like a hedge. I mean, it's just contrary to its whole growth pattern. I mean, it will look absolutely horrible. The whole idea is that it has that laciness, and
You'll have to continue to do that.
you're going to have to do it constantly. I know it's.
Not to mention it'll keep spreading at the base.
How big is that hedge? Does it go for a long ways, all the way down the property line? No.
Well, so what it's showing, what do you have a drawing? Is that it right there?
It's from here to here, roughly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Mr. Chair,
It's
as
mixed
you're
in.
well aware, there could be a agreement between the two neighbors to allow it at 14 feet, I believe.
Okay.
8 plus 6.
So my question to you is, when we went through this whole hedge ordinance issue, seemed to me there was some discussion as it was moved through city council review, et cetera, about the use of bamboo. Can you recall what that
Well,
discussion
yeah, there was some debate about whether it should be allowed at all.
Yeah.
And I think there was a preference not to use it because of the problem of it being growing.
So bamboo was, even in that process, when we adopted the new hedge height ordinance, bamboo was not recommended as a
That's
preferred specimen for hedges.
That's correct.
So getting back to Denise's, or Lisa's, one of your comments about if bamboo is not used, what's the other, what are the other acceptable
Well,
materials?
there's many other hedge materials that could be used that top out at 12 that keep you from having to trim. I'm sure if you're a landscape designer, you know. So you could find something else that would work. Now, the only thing is, though, is that you take the bamboo down, you're going to see this whole structure up above. So it's kind of,
Until a new
well,
hedge
even
grows.
and I mean, even if the hedge, if you don't want the hedge any higher than that solar access line, because your comment was that you don't want the light being cut out from your residence, then you really don't want it to go any higher than 12 feet. But then you open up the whole can of worms that you're going to be able to see the entire top of the structure, which has a deck on top. I mean, so, it's one of those things that you have to weigh and decide upon between you, I guess.
The deck's on the opposite side from them, so.
Okay,
they really
so
won't
it's on
be
the
able
other
to-
side.
Right. I think we got that. Mr. Ramon, could you just reiterate for public and for the applicant the issue of the constitute the agreement between property owners on the 12 and 14-foot notion?
Yes, the city can give an administrative approval for an exception, but one of the conditions is that they actually get support from the joining neighbor to allow for that increase in hedge height.
To up to 14 feet.
That's correct, six more feet.
Okay, but nothing to exceed 14 feet.
That's correct.
And that's based on the species types that are being proposed,
Well,
correct?
also a maintenance issue.
Maintenance
And then you all can condition a project too with specific standards of what type of hedge is being approved for privacy and conditions like air.
All right, and then the 12-foot limit, it can be done by staff.
There's a 12-foot, but there's also, I think that applies to fences where it's 8 and 4.
Okay,
Or walls.
all right. Okay, other questions?
Yeah, another, well, maybe it's part of a comment, but it looks like your wraparound deck here, it's going, we have a requirement that be 15 feet back, and I would certainly support that in this instance. Maybe that's more of a comment, but I thought I'd bring it up while
You
I
would
had
support that being the way it is? Or?
No, you
No,
should want it to
I
be
would like
15
it to
feet.
be 15 feet from the
We
property.
had proposed a screen in that area.
Well, I think it's also
Understanding
activity
your-
that
your-
close to the property line. It's already close to the property line, and that I would tend to be a stickler for it being backed up to 15 feet away from the property line in this instance.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Okay. Other comments?
I have comments, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I can't support the third floor tower. I feel I think it's a beautiful design, but in terms of this neighborhood, you're in the Mesa, I think that's a major privacy issue. I don't think I can, and I agree with
Denise.
Thank you. that you have to do the 15-foot thing, and also I'm a little uncomfortable with the second story peering into the neighbor so closely too. So I'm just having a hard time with it right now. I just don't. It's just this to me is like a watchtower, as you know, so you can peer down on the other neighbors. It's kind of, and I just can't support that right now. I can't support that. I think you can only limit it to 2 stories in terms of the privacy issue, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay. Other comments? I'm going to follow up on this. This model kind of is working in some ways against you because it kind of goes right into the conversation about a watchtower. If I went out and walked this street, the street dead ends down here. So I walked the dead end and also watched the surfers coming up through the secret passageway that comes from the beach. So I can kind of understand the owner's desire to get up high and be able to see stuff, but I think it just, we run into this problem all the time on the Mesa. Everybody wants a deck on the roof. They all want to get a view of the ocean. And, one of our struggles is every property here would want to do that. And so where do we start to put a tackle? The whole reason this board exists is because of the Mesa. And everybody wanting to have something bigger and higher and so forth. So that's the challenge we have when we have to look at this. So I'm not quite there yet to say I can't support this roof deck, but I can't support it at this height. I think that garage needs to be lower. Typically, garages' ceilings can be relatively low. The
ceiling's 8 feet. It's a foot for the...
I understand. So, but I think you could work on that. I think definitely this plate height needs to be dropped here, particularly as it gets to this side. And we've often asked, particularly in the Mesa, we've asked folks that are trying to do these other stories, particularly where we have a conflict, is to get that plate height to reduce to 7.6 at the edge. You can still have a vaulted ceiling in an art studio. I'm an artist. I know that the need for a nice volume, well-lit space, but I think you can get that ceiling height down. And then I think you can, by pulling all of that down, you can start to pull this down. And I think that's going to be important. I think you need to think about whether you really need a window on this side that looks down, even though it's very high. You know, you could get by maybe with a couple little peekaboo windows, as you already pointed out from your diagram, that are actually above eye height. And one of the things that always helps, let the scale go. Somewhere there's a scale around here. There, where the
here it is.
Scale is. This is the finished floor height. Here's a 6-foot person. So getting that to understand there. So I think rethink that window. This window is probably of no consequence. You can't really, that's just really for ventilation.
That's looking the other way, too.
It's looking the other way, although you might want to think about on the floor plan even making the effort to put the windows here and here and not there.
Yeah,
not there, because this is a closet, but again, you got to make the closet work. And I think that it most definitely got to get rid of this bamboo, and it's got to have a different species in here, so that there's not this constant issue of trimmed or not trimmed. A while back, we had an applicant in here with the whole neighborhood was fighting about whether the person actually cut it or didn't cut it, and I mean, it got down to we had a police report. So I don't think we want to get there. So let's think about what that material is. And so I would encourage that to happen, and I also would encourage the owner of this property, as they begin to develop their landscaping, which isn't developed at this point, that they think about what they need to have over here to protect their views, but also to allow sunlight. The reason we have a solar access ordinance is to make sure that sunlight is allowed into adjoining property. That's why that ordinance exists. That's what this line represents. But I think any effort that you can do to get this thing reduced down will go, at least in my mind, in more favor of getting what you want approved. So those are my comments. Other comments? Okay, if we have no other comments, then the chair would look for a motion. Mr. Lamone, this says coastal review is required. Does this have to go to somebody else before it comes back to us, or how does that work? In other words, could we give this project design approval, or what is our?
Did you check with staff if it qualified as an exclusion, exemption?
I think it did.
Yeah, so it's probably the case.
So it's an exclusion. So
you can do that.
In theory, we have a couple actions that we can take today. One is we could do comments only and ask the applicant to return with corrective work or whatever might be suggested. We could give it project design approval with comments, which then would trigger a 10-day appeal period, or we could give it project design approval without comments, which would trigger a 10-day appeal period. So I will look to the board to make a motion.
Go ahead. I move to continue the project indefinitely, or 2 weeks. Which one?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I'm not going to guarantee you that.
Can't do that. Okay, indefinitely.
Whenever he says.
We got a
to the
full
full
calendar.
Board. To the full board with the following comments. The board cannot approve the tower above the 2-story art studio and garage. We would like to see the plate heights come down on the upper floor above the garage. We would like to also recommend that the bamboo hedge be replaced with a plant that is more appropriate and easier to maintain the solar access between the neighbors, and that we highly encourage the applicant to consult the neighbor about a possible agreement for hedge height agreement between the two of you to see what will work for both parties.
That's your
my
motion. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there further comment? Seeing no further comment? Staff, yes.
Yes. Just clarify the first one, cannot approve the tower. I think it would be good to explain if there are design alternatives or what exactly about the tower is not acceptable.
Well, the tower is just an element of that we find to be a little obtrusive for the neighborhood, that it's not in keeping with the neighborhood compatibility guidelines, that it creates a privacy issue for the neighbors. We do encourage also that the deck that surrounds the second-story studio adhere to our 15-foot from property line limit. And possibly that whole upper tower could be an extension of that terrace off into the garden or something. I don't know. Some other way to incorporate that square footage at the second floor, but not as a third floor unit.
Okay. That's your motion. Is that acceptable, clarified to the second?
Yes.
Seconder? Okay.
That's the question.
Further discussion? Okay. The applicant.
Could we deal with landscaping solution, plant a tree? The only neighbor that's affected at all is the one just to the west, and a couple trees there could take care of that problem. No, you wouldn't be able to see anyone. No one else can see that deck except this neighbor here, and a couple trees would take care of that issue.
We're going to need to have some documents to be able to show that.
Okay.
And I would also ask for the tower, is it the roof element or the presence of the terrace there? If the roof element were to...
I think the motion is the third deck is not acceptable.
Not acceptable.
Okay. So I understand. With or without the trellis. I'm assuming that's what you mean, correct? Okay. So that's the motion on the floor. Okay. Is there further discussion? Given where we are, I'm going to actually vote against the motion.
Oh.
Okay. And only because I think I could see a possible solution for the third floor tower, but this isn't it. But I'm open to looking at another solution. That would be the only reason I would vote against the motion. Now, all the other
I think that's.
components of the motion are
I would be reasonably. I'm very uncomfortable because you say like it's in the mesa and you've got this tower looking in, but you're saying there's a design solution.
I think there's a design solution there, but this is not it.
Well, I can't support it. I can't support it.
This is what we're looking at right now.
It's precedent setting, and I'm uncomfortable with it in this neighborhood.
Okay, and that's the only reason I'd say I'd vote against it. Okay.
That's all right.
Okay.
So you need to vote.
Okay. So is there any other comment? And the reason I did that is that I think it's important when we make votes, if you're going to vote against something, you should explain to your colleagues why you're voting against something rather than just saying I'm against it, because then we all walk away kind of going, why did he vote against it?
I cited why.
Okay. So, I mean, that's important. People need to understand that.
Their question is too late.
You can ask the other question, but we have a motion on the floor, and I'm about ready to take a vote. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So it passes 3-1. Okay. Right. So we will see you back here with another approach. Okay. Thank you.
I gotta call John Sorrells.
Okay. We are at the end of the agenda. Is there any other business before the Single Family Design Board? Seeing none, the chair will call for adjournment.